Welcome back, beautiful people. Now we learned that Kelsey has been rejected by at least four major hospitals for a lung transplant. Now she's going to discuss with us which hospital that actually told her, hey, come in, we will take on your case and we will give you a transplant. So let's hear how it all went for her and how she's doing today. Thank you. Telling us how she got turned down by quite a few major institutions because they were afraid that her double lung transplant had too much complication built in there and they didn't want to risk it. So you said Temple turned you down, Vanderbilt, UCLA, and I might be missing a couple more. So who was there left? What was the last hospital standing, and how did that go?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, so a lot of those came in November, the denials. End of November, like if I felt bad, started feeling worse. And I was getting incredibly anemic again. So, of course, when you're anemic, you don't have any red blood cells to carry around oxygen. Well, if you've already got chronic illness with trouble with carrying around blood, like this just made it even worse. So,
Yeah.
I ended up, December 2nd, I ended up passing out and I got med flighted down to Milwaukee. Yeah, it
Oh wow.
was it was bad. Yeah.
Oh wow.
I was severely anemic. They tried to see, where was this bleeding coming from? And
Hmm.
yeah, it was horrible. So it was around this time, think I'd gotten my last denial, and I got asked by, again, the UW team, the nurse and doctors, still helping me out. Incredible. They asked if I wanted to place a referral to Duke, and I was like, why not? Like, let's just do it.
Sure.
So did that, and the next day turned around and said, absolutely not. We don't want to have her as a patient. Yeah. So that was
Wow.
incredible. Yeah. And I was told that
Wow.
I think Duke takes on some of the most complicated patients in the lung transplant realm. So that was like a huge blow. If I already
Hmm.
hadn't been super defeated by 3 denials, make it 4. Like why not add another
Wow.
one? It was also
Wow.
at this time I had kind of been in communication with Columbia, and they
Hmm.
still hadn't really made decisions, but they were talking. And when I was in this hospital stay, I actually got a call from a New York number, and I was like, "Oh, like I don't know what this area code is. Like I've never seen it in my life."
Two
It
one
ended
two.
up,
What's going on?
yeah, it ended up being one of the transplant pulmonologists at
Mm.
Columbia, which was kind of a surprise for the fact that it was Columbia, but also that it was a doctor calling me directly.
Hmm.
Um, they just said that they had received everything. They've been talking about me, but this doctor wanted to talk to me themselves face to
Mm.
face. And they had asked if we could do a virtual visit
Mm.
because we're in 2 different states. And I think at the time it was still legal to do telehealth outside of the state you're licensed in. If it
Hmm.
wasn't, you didn't hear it from me. But I
Well, you
almost,
could have used
yeah,
a
I
Zoom, man. It's a
almost,
Zoom call. Don't worry.
yeah, I don't want to dox anybody because I don't want
Yeah.
licenses getting lost. Um,
Mm.
but they wanted to do a virtual visit, which I thought was really nice. So we got one on the calendar. It was before the holidays. Um, and I ended up getting discharged from the hospital. Everything was stable. I had another med added on. In October, I had switched to an IV version of a med I'd been on. So I got a central line place. So that's like what
Hmm.
happened then. So now I had a pick line and a central line.
Oh, don't
Um,
you love pick lines? Don't you love pick
oh
lines?
God,
Oh,
lovely.
Jesus.
Amazing. I love it when I'm the one caring for it, but I don't love it when I'm the one that has it.
Yeah.
So I had the virtual visit with this doctor. They they did their due diligence, like interrogated everything, like asked tons of thorough questions, went over the allotted time, like just the attention to detail was amazing, and
Hmm.
they were very great at communicating with me after that point. So
Hmm.
I didn't really know what to expect. Well, I didn't know what to expect, but I was like, you know what, based on how everything else has been going, I'm not gonna get my hopes up. I'm just not. Like I
But
had 4 denials already, so
let me
I
ask you
am
though.
just gonna see where it goes. Yeah.
Yeah, let me ask you real quick. So, and I understand your set of mind, but the fact that you mentioned earlier that the pulmonologists themselves reach out to you, not a
Mm.
nurse, not not a letter in the mail or whatever, that did you at least in your mind said, okay, I'm kind of like the vibes I'm getting from this hospital, whether they're gonna do it or not, like you were not sure, but were you at least kind of the same, wavelength? I mean, were you like on
Yeah.
the same, you know, how you felt like they communicated with you?
Yeah. I had been in contact with, I believe it was some of the secretaries at Columbia who helped coordinate um,
Hmm.
people getting consulted about transplant. But hearing from a doctor from a nurse perspective was amazing because
Hmm.
time and time again you hear stories of people not having those great doctor patient relationships, or they're hearing information second or third hand from the patient perspective. As somebody who hadn't talked to a doctor at any of those other centers, again, this should be bare minimum, but I was kind of blown away. I was like, all right, so this is a center that seems to take provider patient relationship very seriously. So that
Hmm.
I got started with a good taste in my mouth. So that made me more open to wanting to see what could happen next.
Okay. So, and what did happen next?
Yeah, the holidays kind of backed everything up because it's
Yeah.
Christmas and then you have those couple days and New Year's. But what a lot of doctors do is they take that time off in between Christmas and New Year's along with the other holidays.
Mhm.
So I ended up having to wait a couple weeks. Not to mention, I was told I'd be getting talked about at the next, or I think the first meeting they had in January, only to be forgotten to get put on the agenda. So I had to wait another week, which
Oh
was like,
wow.
for somebody like my life was depending on this, it was like, come on, like
Mhm.
talk about me. But mid-January, I got the call like soon after they got done with the meeting. My now doctor called me and was like, hey, like we want you to come out to New York, which felt absolutely surreal. Like
Mhm.
that did not comprehend in my mind. Like New York, like never in a million years did I think I'd be going out for this kind of reason.
Mhm. By the way, did you ever make it to New York beforehand, or was that your first trip?
No, that was my first trip.
Ah, so you got
Yeah.
two for the price of one: a doctor's visit and a Statue of Liberty.
Yeah, I drove by, saw the skyline. I was like, what am I getting myself into?
Wow. Okay. So do
Yeah.
tell us about your visit and how things progress from there.
Yeah, so I'd been in quite extensive contact. So that pulmonologist that reached out to me is now my doctor. We had been in quite a lot of contact prior. They had asked, can you come out to New York? It was like the week of February 6th, which was very specific, but in hindsight, it was because they were on service in the hospital at that time. So
Mhm.
the plan was to admit me to the hospital as soon as I got there, just because I was so severe. And they had almost everything they needed for my evaluation, but they wanted to complete a couple things. So that could get
Sure.
expedited if I got admitted. So at this point, they hadn't decided if, they were going to list me. So they just wanted me to come out. So I got to New York. It was February 7th, a Tuesday. Literally landed, went to the hotel, got checked in, found out I needed a COVID test to get admitted to the
Mm.
hospital, which
Yes,
my
at
doctor
the
had
time.
forgotten to get me. So
Mm.
they were like, oh, there are these booths on Broadway that you can go get a COVID test. I'm like, what do you
Yeah, in the
mean? So,
streets. Yeah, in the
yeah,
streets.
I
I've
had
done
never,
those. Yeah.
that is not a thing in the Midwest. So they're like,
I
oh,
know
a
it's
COVID
crazy,
test
right?
on Broadway? What do you mean?
Yeah.
Found it, right? And I was like blown away. So I got my test. This is a story I like to tell. So the first time I met my doctor was actually not virtually. It was not in the hospital. It was outside. So I was finishing up, yeah, I was finishing up these COVID tests, and I get a call from my doctor, and they're like, hey, like, did you get those COVID tests? I was like, yeah, I just got them. They were like, okay, stay where you are. I'm coming down. I'm coming to get it. And I was like, whoa, okay, like, this is like, I'm not ready to meet my doctor. Anyway, ended up meeting on the street for the first time. Literally got my results, had me email them to them, and I was in my head, I was like, what doctor would run down to the street to get a test from a
Mhm,
patient? I can't think of, I can maybe count on one hand all those
mhm,
doctors. So that really set a good impression. I was like, all right, I think I'm in the right hands. I got that done. We went and had lunch. I had an anxious breakdown. That night, they got me a hospital bed. So
oh
I had been
wow.
in New York for like 6 or 7 hours, and then
Mhm,
I was in the hospital.
wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So now, did you have anybody with you that came with you? I'm assuming you didn't come on
Yeah.
your own. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. I mean,
my mom and dad came with me.
yeah,
Thankfully, they gave up a
yeah,
lot.
it's definitely to have that kind of good support to kind of ground you because I mean, really, you're going to a whole different state. You've never been there before, and then after, all these hospitals, rejected you, and it's like, okay, so I can only imagine what's going through your mind. So
Yeah.
you were hospitalized, and from when you were hospitalized, I'm sure they probably run a battery of tests on you, blood tests and all that beautiful stuff. When did they make the decision that okay, we're going to list you, and then were you discharged thereafter, or they kept you in the hospital?
So I got admitted February 7th. They finished up the testing they needed in 3 days, which is incredibly fast. Um, then I had to wait till the following Friday. So I got my decision on February 17th that they wanted to list me for a double lung, which there's a video of me like signing the paperwork and everything, which I love. Um, I had actually asked about getting discharged. I was like, you all really like want me to wait in the hospital until I get long? Like, I'm not really about that. If I'm in New York, I might as well like kind of see what's going on, right?
Of
Um,
course, go see a
my
Broadway
doc-
play, have fun.
yeah, my doctor was kind of like, well, if you really wanted to, we can make it work, but we don't really want you to leave just because you're not doing very well. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I'm well enough to be in the city. So I ended up staying. I was admitted
Okay.
until I got my lung transplant on March 13th.
Okay, wow. Okay, so okay, so it wasn't a terrible wait. So that to me, that tells me that you were so bad that you got moved up the list fairly quickly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I mean, I know there's a lot of factors involved. Don't get me wrong, like the
Yeah.
amount of lungs available, your size and everything else. Because for me, what probably was kind of hard because I'm like 6'3", usually I'm 270. So, but yeah, I did wait. I was listed in March of 2021 and got transplanted October
Oh
2021.
wow.
So yeah, and
Yeah.
hospitalized in August.
Okay.
So yeah, I was at because like you said, with pulmonary hypertension, it affects the heart. So I thought all the time I thought I had a heart situation because my heart
Yeah.
wasn't right. So I was
Yep.
seeing a cardiologist. I was seeing one of the best cardiologists in the country, Dr. Evelyn Horn at the Weill Cornell. And then so it's like, is it the chicken or the egg? Is it the heart? Is it the lungs? But it's the it's the pulmonary hypertension putting pressure on the whole system. So therefore, the heart has to do a lot more work. So therefore, the heart is becoming bigger and bigger. So yeah,
Yep.
so yeah, I'm definitely familiar with what you went
Yeah. I think important to note is that so I got listed. I had gotten a lung allocation score, which is what you had. They were switching scoring systems in March. So it was supposed to be March 3rd, if I'm not mistaken, to the composite allocation score.
through. Okay.
I had gotten a lung allocation score, LAS, and then I got a composite score, CAS. So what changed with the composite scoring system is that now instead of there being a geographic limit, there was none. So they could go anywhere for long, so long as like you were one of the ones at the top of the list, you
Mm-hmm.
had a higher score than other people, but then if you were competing with someone, so to speak, for a pair of lungs, whoever, and you had similar scores, similar blood type, height, etc., whoever
Mm-hmm.
was closer got the set of lungs.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I already had a really high score for the lung allocation system. My doctor wrote an exception letter to get me a higher score in the 95th percentile.
Mm-hmm.
When I got my composite score, it was whatever that equivalent was. So it was really
Mm-hmm.
high. Um, I was listed like a week before I got my first offer, which didn't work out because only one lung was good. But then I had found out in the process of the workup that I had COVID, which
Oh,
I
wow. Yeah.
I didn't feel any symptoms. That's what I don't get. I had no symptoms. Nothing would have indicated I had it. So I ended up having to go through isolation. I got 5 days of remdesivir. I was off the list
Oh,
for a week. Um,
wow, wow, wow. Talking about a bummer. I mean, that's like a big
I know.
speed bump, because I mean, you're lucky you didn't feel anything, but the fact that you had COVID, that could have been just a automatic dismissal, at least,
Yeah, it was. They
so
took me
yeah.
right off. I got a letter and
Hmm.
everything, but I got back on like 5, 6 days later. I
Good,
got my
good.
second offer like a week later, and then that was a no-go because only one lung was good. And after
Hmm.
that, third time was the charm.
There you go. There you go.
Uh,
Congrats, congrats. Okay, so let's move this along. I mean, we're having such a good time. I don't want to move it along too fast, but
I have a
um,
lot to say.
yes, yes, no, and that's great. And I want you to say that. So that third time, I don't know if you ever had time to think because I had 6 dry runs. For people who doesn't know,
Wow.
dry runs is when, like Kelsey said, like when something's wrong with the lung or doesn't fit something, so I got transplanted on the seventh one, and I remember every time they had to take like 25 vials of blood and all that
Oh
beautiful
God.
stuff. It was so,
Yeah.
it was so exhausting, and I remember a couple of times. Uh, One of the overnight nurse made a mistake in labeling the vial,
Oh
so
no.
therefore like a couple of them was mislabeled, so they had to redo it. I remember it was like 52 vials of blood, and I guess you cannot eat for 12 hours before that. So it was just like an insane. It was insane.
God.
But here we
Yeah.
are. Here we are telling our story. So once you got transplanted, tell me what your first, when you came through, what was your first thought? What was your first breath like? Because I was so afraid to do it on my own. Talk to me. Let the people
I
know what happened, what's going on.
again, I laugh now because it was funny, and
Yeah.
I remember a lot of my ICU experience. A lot of people don't. I remember I like vivid detail. I laugh now. It was not funny then. I
Mhm.
remember starting to come to, and they had been trying to wean me off the ventilator and hadn't been working anyway. So got off of it. You remember how icky that feeling was when they're pulling that out of your lungs? Yeah. I remember getting out, took my first couple breaths, and I could feel my chest rattle. And in my brain, I was like, "This is not what I signed up for. This is this is not right." So my doc, so my doctor had been on. I think they were on rounds. If not, they wanted to come by, say hi, whatever. Remember taking my couple breaths. My doctor comes in and is like, "Hey, Kelsey, like, how are you doing?" I have no voice, which I'm
Mhm.
also stunned by because I'm like, wait, now I can't even express how I feel. Like,
Mhm.
but I whispered, and my aunt came to visit. She can testify to these words, and I'm not making it up. I My first words were in a whispered voice. These are some janky ass lungs. What did you do to me?
Probably the medication talking. Oh, by the way, did you have a trach? Because I had a trach, and that's
No,
like,
thankfully,
oh, lucky
no.
you, man. Ooh.
Yeah.
Talk about speaking, man. That's just, just thinking about it, I got PTSD. My goodness. But yeah,
yeah.
wow. Okay. And what did they do? They probably laughed at you.
I I remember my doctor going like, "What do you mean? Like your numbers are perfect, your pulmonary pressures are normal, your oxygen is 100." I was like, something's not right. It's not supposed to feel like this. I'm not supposed to feel all this junk in my lungs. They're supposed to be clear. And they go, "Well, it's normal after transplant that people have congestion." I was like, "No, this is not. I didn't sign up for this. You need to fix this right now." So they were like, okay, like we'll do a bedside bronchoscopy, like take a look. I was like, "Okay, good." And I also remember telling myself at the time, like I felt I was fully coherent. Later to find out I was delusional.
No, of
Delusional.
course.
Like
Major
we
drugs.
all were.
Major
I
drugs. Yeah.
I literally remember telling my nurse, like I was telling her what I was seeing.
Hmm.
And as a nurse, like you learn about ICU delirium. I had
Hmm.
literally told my nurse, "I'm not delirious. This is real." Like I was fully aware of that, but yet here
Hmm.
I was like actually being delirious.
Yeah.
So those first couple breaths did not feel good, so to speak.
Hmm.
And I knew that, when they were taking out my lungs, like our lungs, right? Like they
Hmm.
sever that nerve that communicates with your brain.
Hmm.
So if we feel anything, if there's anything in our lungs, like we're not feeling it except for our, what's like if you feel something vibrating or rattling. We don't like our brain isn't saying, "Oh, if you have some mucus, cough it up." So I wasn't supposed to feel anything. So the fact that I did, like, immediately set off a red flag once I woke up.
Mm. Yeah. Well, for me, I remember my first couple of breaths, it hurt to breathe. I was afraid to breathe.
Yeah.
They took me off the ventilator. They put the little now I'm losing all my mind.
Oxygen cannula.
Yeah, actually, yeah, the cannula. So and I was like, okay, yeah. I'm like, put the oxygen on, put the oxygen on. But little did I know they had turned off the oxygen because I was asking for it. They put the cannula with nothing on there. So I'm like, the oxygen? They said, yeah. They said, yeah. So I'm like, okay. I'm like, okay. And then so after like a couple of hours, when that's just after I came through, because it took me like a couple of weeks to like really come through. So, and I
Yeah.
was like, okay, so when can I take off, the oxygen? They said, well, the oxygen's been off for the past 8 hours. I was like, what?
Biggest gag
So
of your life.
they said like you were breathing on your own, but since you were freaking out, the oxygen, you put the cannula on you. I was like, I felt like a fool, but also relieved. That was just amazing. That was just
I
amazing.
can relate. Well, so
Hmm.
to continue on with where I last left off, so I had that bedside bronchoscopy, right? Don't
Hmm.
know if anybody has had that before. I would
I don't.
not recommend. They could
I
not
don't.
get me down with sedatives. They could not.
It's
I don't
tough.
know if my body just tolerated. They could not fully get me down. My doctor went through with it anyway, so I was kind of coherent with this bronch. Not a great feeling.
Yeah, you
So
feel it. You
doctor,
feel it.
please
Yeah.
next time fully knock me out. Please give me whatever you have in that Pyxis. Okay.
Hmm.
So they took samples um of the mucus that was in there. One of them came back positive for mycobacterium, which for those who don't know, mycobacterium is a species of bacteria that exists. There are, I think, four main types, one of which could be Mycobacterium tuberculosis, which is tuberculosis, right? That now
Yeah.
this positive sample didn't mean I had it, but they were like, "Well, that's strange. Like we tested, your donor lungs for tuberculosis prior to transplanting you,
Hmm.
and came back negative." So then they wanted a sputum sample. I had a lot of sputum to bring up, but I didn't have that chest strength to cough it up. So I
You
remember
can,
that
yeah.
was
Hmm.
that was horrible trying to. And again, I was afraid to breathe too. Like I was gonna somehow damage my lungs.
Yeah, yeah, the new
So
lungs. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, oh my
I was
god.
like,
Well, for me
I
was
don't know
for
how to use
yeah, for me was the chest. The chest was hurting still. I was like, ugh,
Yeah,
you know.
I had no strength. But I got a sputum sample. They tested again, positive. So they sent it to a lab. which then confirmed I had tuberculosis. And it was like,
Oh my
great, throw
goodness.
another thing on my
Wow.
plate. I got tuberculosis after transplant, right?
Wow.
Like,
Mhm.
amazing. So that was just another thing to deal with. I have a really great infectious disease doctor, like amazing. And everybody was so on top of it, got put on the meds. Um, I didn't feel any symptoms. My oxygen was amazing. And
Mhm.
tuberculosis, it usually takes a while to develop. It's slow to grow, slow to die, as the saying goes.
Yes, yes, yes.
So the fact that they detected it as early as they did was really like a miracle in itself. So I don't know why things worked out the way they did, but I'm thankful it's had no impact on my lungs.
Well, that's wonderful. I mean, in a sense, it's great that they detected it while you were at the hospital. Why they doing
Yeah,
all that tests? You know what I mean?
yeah,
Imagine if you had gone home and with tuberculosis and not knowing, and God forbid, by
yeah.
the time you realize it, God knows how much damage could have been done internally. Okay,
Yeah.
wow. So how long did you stay in the hospital once post surgery?
Yeah, so I was in the ICU for a week. I got moved to the cardiac care unit because they didn't have a bed up on the transplant floor. I was there for like 4 hours and they said, hey, we actually have a bed that opened up. And I needed an infection room, an isolation
Sure,
room.
sure, sure,
So they
sure.
had one that opened up upstairs and I was there until April 22nd.
Okay, okay,
But
that's good.
I have a funny oxygen story too. So I was, I think it was the same day I left the ICU. So they put the oxygen cannula on, like, after you get off the ventilator, all that. And I was like, oh,
Mhm.
thank God, like a lifeline. Like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
good. Like, keep this strapped on me. Don't take this away. I had no idea if air was going in it or not. I think I was told it was maybe at like 2 liters, maybe one.
yeah.
And I
Yeah.
remember the rounding doctor pulmonologist had come later and they were, asked me how I'm feeling, like what's going on. And then they go, can I take this for a second? Just took the cannula off my face. And I was like, what are you doing? You don't need that.
That's your safety blanket for crying out
Yeah, I was like, I don't know that this lung transplant completely worked. Like, you have to give that back to me. Uh, I think it's so funny, and the doctor was like, yeah, like look at your oxygen. I was like, 100, like that's got to be fake. Like somebody put that up there. I'm not breathing 100. No, I was. So that I always laugh at that, but I was like the audacity, but it was really funny.
Yeah, but it's just like psychologically, it's just showing like the mind is so powerful
Like, yeah,
because it, it,
yeah,
it gave me that security, like, okay, I got oxygen. Even though my thing was saying like, 99, 100% like yours, but I'm like, I got my oxygen. That thing wasn't even blood, that thing wasn't even going at all. And but
yeah,
psychologically they allow me to just, believe in that. And then they were like, hey, listen, you've been on that thing all for almost 8 hours. What do you don't need oxygen.
yeah.
It's like, oh my
Mine was
God.
like a week. Mine was like a week. They're like, we've had enough of this shit. Like,
That is awesome. That is awesome. So now, obviously, you're from Wisconsin. So post transplant, you got to see your providers fairly frequently. Because I remember I used to go every week. I was in the hospital for a long time, and then even when once discharged, I had to go every week for a while, and then you had to space it out. So basically, you had to stay in New York, whether you like it or not. You couldn't see your beautiful your favorite Packers live, but you had to stay in New York and see your doctors. So uh, how has life post transplant been for you?
yeah, it's been a lot and simultaneously not, but in the best way I can describe it. So
Mhm.
I still get I still get follow-up care. So I had been weekly, went to every 2 weeks in end of July, and was attached to that for a while, and then just last month started going monthly. So,
Okay.
when you're used to being in the medical realm and regular appointments, it's like a lifeline. So,
Hmm.
that's like a lot of what I'd really known. I was hesitant to start dwindling visits down.
Mhm.
Just it's and I like again like being here in New York, it's nice knowing that I've got people regularly checking up on me, even though it's my medical team. Um,
Yeah.
Tuberculosis hasn't caused a problem. I'm finishing up therapy for that. And of course, I was told by the medical director of the program, like, you're the first person I've seen in my 30-year career where I've had this happen with the tuberculosis after transplant. I was like, I'm glad I could be the first one. Like, I will be the blueprint, right? Um, but working with the Department of Health here in New York City, everything's been going really great. I ended up getting a pneumothorax after a bronchoscopy in May, and the x-ray after the bronchoscopy looked great, so I got discharged. Little did I know that that whole week until my next visit, I had actually had a pneumothorax and just didn't know it. My oxygen was
Wow.
perfect, all my vitals, my PFTs looked stellar. Like, you wouldn't have known, but my doctor saw me and got the x-ray and looked at it and literally called me. I was halfway back to the apartment and went, Kelsey, you've got a left moderate pneumothorax. I was like, you're joking, right? Like,
Wow.
you just saw me today. They're like, no, but we gotta try to get you a bed. You gotta come in and get a chest tube. And I was like, great. Like,
Wow.
yeah. So
Well,
I had a week in the hospital, but everything got patched up, and I haven't had any stays yet. So hopefully never.
mhm. Okay. Okay. Well, listen, that's one thing people need to know, that you're gonna continuously, especially I guess in the first 3, 5 years, you're gonna do checkup. You're gonna continue to have a lot of checkup. You're gonna have certain things that are happening, uh, but it's up to you to stay on top. If you don't feel if you don't feel good, or feel something is off, say it. Be your own advocate. If it's just taking on a blood test, whatever you need to do, you just gotta stay on top of things and communicate with your team. So, like I said in the beginning, I mean, you look great. I think you're one of the lucky ones, really,
Thank you.
because I know for sure, for me, I had physical. I don't know. Did you have? Well, I'm sure you have some PT, but did you have like post transplant physical therapy, anything like that?
No, but I have another funny story with that. So when I was in the hospital, I couldn't leave my room. So all the PT I got was in the room. They literally brought a portable treadmill, and
Mm-hmm.
that was my exercise, along with some,
Yeah.
like sit to stands and
Yeah.
getting
Yeah.
my leg strength. But I was told like I might as well get some cardiopulmonary rehab. Like, I was doing really
Yeah.
great, but they said it wouldn't hurt. So I was like, okay. So I went to one of my first appointments and asked my doctor if I could get that, and they were like, why do you need that? I'm like, what do you mean? I just had a double lung transplant. They're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you want it, we can do it, but you don't need physical therapy. You don't need cardiopulmonary rehab. And I was like,
Wow.
okay. So I
Wow.
never did it. So thankfully, no. But that brain was saying, maybe it'd
Sure.
be a good
Sure.
idea.
Well, I mean, listen, that's really great, and I think part of it, you have youth on your side. I mean, that's a big thing that we shouldn't take for granted as well.
Yeah.
You're very young, and I think that works for you, because I always tell people, that are pre-transplant, you really have to take into account your age, your weight, everything else, especially if you're going to be listed. I mean, they even tell you got to be at a certain weight if you can get there. But I always tell people, do pulmonary rehab, get strong as soon as you can. So once you post transplant, because that surgery is a big surgery and it drains so much out of you. So for you
Hmm.
to kind of regain your strength as quickly as possible, you have to build up a certain amount of strength within you, and that is very helpful. That is very
Yeah.
helpful.
I didn't realize just how much chronic illness took a toll on my body until I got discharged from the hospital, and I was weighing myself and looking at past photos. I mean, even now I'm like, holy shit, I was sick. Like, everybody was
Mhm.
telling me I was sick, and my brain was like, yeah, but now I'm
Yeah,
like,
I
wow,
mean, yeah, you
you
don't
know,
see that yourself.
all right.
You see yourself. You see yourself as your mind sees its, sees yourself. So
Yeah, that's
absolutely,
true.
that's what it is. So now let me ask you. You graduated. You're a registered nurse. Congrats on that. What are
Thank
your
you.
future plans? Because I know everybody's different. So I want to put a disclaimer here. Obviously, I'm not a doctor. I'm just a recipient. But I know everybody's different. Everybody, some people can work, some people cannot work, some people choose to work, some people choose not to work. I mean, I was a correction officer, so that's out of the window,
Yeah.
But about you are a registered nurse. You are in that field. Uh, is your plan is to go back being a nurse, A, and B, how do you feel about that? Are you nervous? Not nervous that about doing the job, because once you start doing it, you'll do it, but just being in that environment, because as an immunocompromised person, you got to be extra careful. Even though I don't, nurses and doctors do masks. So do tell me what what is your feeling? How do you feel about A, are you clear to go back to work? And what are you gonna do?
Yeah, so I actually did get clearance to do a part-time job. Now, I'm sure if I wanted to go full-time, I could probably convince my team. I was told healthcare provider to healthcare provider, however, that working inpatient in a hospital, it could be done. However, there was a lot of well, not specialties, but a lot of areas that were not recommended. So what I now want
Mm,
to do is transplant nursing. I previously
mm,
had wanted to work with um, kids with severe heart problems like myself, and that's something I'd still
mhm.
love to do, but transplants become a new area of interest. So working inpatient on a transplant floor is a no-no because of the infectious patients that come in.
Mhm,
A med surge
mhm,
floor is off limits because of infection.
mhm,
Pretty much any floor inpatient is off limits.
mm,
Um,
mm.
I so like I said, I'd like to do transplant nursing. I'm hoping I can try to get a job in the organ procurement world. I think that would be really cool to work on
Okay,
the backside. Um,
okay.
or even like if I do outpatient specialty in a clinic, so work with like um, maybe like pre-transplant patients or work like
Mhm.
in GI, cardiology, whatever. If it's specialty and people aren't coming in for infection, that would
Exactly.
work. Um, things like going into people's homes and doing home care. I mean, I feel like it's eliminated a lot of options, especially
Mhm,
for new nurses. They push working in the hospital just because that
mhm.
there is a huge need. But I know that there's a lot of avenues I can take that don't involve a hospital.
Okay.
So right now it's kind of just like, browsing all the job sites and,
Mhm.
seeing what pops up and could work. And then another part of it is just making sure that, nurse shifts are usually 10 to 12 hours. Sometimes they're
Mm,
8, but usually 12. So
mhm,
making sure that I can handle that.
mhm. I mean, I'm so glad that you said that, because even though you do have a profession on hand that technically you can do, but you got to look at it with more scrutiny right now. That you've been,
Yeah.
to a transplant, and you know what the risk, quote unquote, risk and rewards are. So it definitely makes a lot of sense that for you to kind of pick and choose which way you want to go. And by the same token, you having gone to a transplant, I think you could really find something within that community. I think that would really be awesome for you. I mean, yes, I don't know much about nursing, but I'm sure. I mean, I've seen nurses behind a desk doing, other things. You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
that you don't necessarily have to be, quote unquote, inpatient. I really think that your journey thus far provide you with a very unique experience that, hopefully, and I pray that you can find something, you know, within that field that you have experience, whether it's pre-transplant or post-transplant patients, that you have a unique experience yourself that you can contribute
Yeah.
besides being a nurse. I really think, I
And
really hope you can find something like that. I really do. I really
yeah,
do.
that is that's what I want to do. And I see
Mhm.
health advocacy in my future too. I
Mhm.
think that's really important to me. Um, yeah, so just kind of seeing where the wind blows, but I want to work with people. That's why I got into nursing. So I feel like in ways this has kind of been a wrench in the process, but on the other
Mhm.
hand, these experiences opened up a totally different path, and I think it was meant for a reason. So I've been through
Ex-
worse, so I'll take what comes, and I'll do it with grace.
exactly. I 100% agree with you, Kelsey. I really think that, I mean, my goodness, if you tell me 5 years ago, I wouldn't like, "Psh, what do you know what I mean?" So
Yeah.
there are certain things that when a door closes, another door is open that wasn't even on your radar, that you weren't even
Yep.
thinking about. So,
Yep.
like, one of my main thing I'm trying to do really is to, you know, talk to people that are, pre-transplant, even people that are post-transplant, help them in little way I can, through the journey. And I really think you're gonna find something that you probably didn't even think of.
And
That's probably there. That's not advertised. I really believe that you're gonna find something that
create,
you
yeah,
like within that
create my own
lane that
thing.
you like.
That's
Exactly,
that's something
exactly.
I've been thinking about too. So
Yeah, yeah, and you'll find success in it because it'll be something that you enjoy doing, and that's the sad part. Like very few of us get to do something that we really enjoy. Just good for me. It's like at work I had to work, whatever. But very few times you really get to enjoy what you do, and those that are very lucky. So I really think you're gonna find something in your lane that you like to, that it doesn't even feel like it's working, that you're gonna flourish in. I
thank
really
you.
do.
I appreciate
You
that.
know. Yeah, no doubt. So listen, I mean, we've been talking for a while, and I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful to you for your time. Like you said before, you're a member of my transplant support group. We had a picnic last month. We had,
Hell yeah.
we had fun. That's good. That's good. I want to tell people that it's good that post-transplant people, can get together once in a while, so you know that you're not alone. That you have other people that's been to similar situation that understand your situation, and it's a good thing. And that's what I try to do at Lung Transplant Nation, just to get people together, tell their story, and sometimes, when we can, we all meet as a group and have a good time. So thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else you would like to offer? Oh, lastly,
Oh yeah.
was it worth it? Was it worth it to have the transplant?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Amen.
Undoubtedly.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Because sometimes on Facebook group people are having I mean, you can understand they're having doubts, should I go through, should I bother? I always tell them, yes, it is. Every time, you spend another day, another week, another month, another 6 months, another year, it is worth it. Okay, it
Hmm.
is worth it. It's not gonna be easy, and everybody's the same, but it is worth it.
Yes.
Uh So once again, thank you so much for your time, Kelsey. I really appreciate it. I'll see you on the Facebook group, Zoom call fairly soon. But thank you for taking the time for talking to us here at Lunch Transport Nation. I appreciate your time. You have a great day.
You too. Thanks for having me, Sasha.
Thank you. Well, folks, this is it for today. I really want to thank from the bottom of my heart Miss Kelsey Wedding for giving us the time to tell her story. And I hope that many people, whether they're pre-transplant, even post-transplant, can get something out of her story. I felt like it was very informative, and she was very frank and honest about her journey thus far. And I also want to thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and do tell your friends about us, what we're trying to do here. Basically, having conversation with people that are post-transplant recipients. So if you know anybody, please reach me at longtransplantnation at gmail.com. It's longtransplantnation at gmail.com. And I would love to hear from you. Thank you. Have a great day.